Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Lunchtime Learning. I'm delighted get my teeth in. I'm delighted today to be joined by Grace Watson from Grace Green Homes. How are you, Grace?
I'm really well, thank you. How are you doing?
I am really well now. My teeth have been put back in. So,
Helpful, yeah.
so tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into agency in the first place, please.
I always think so many people's answers to this are the same in that I definitely didn't grow up with a kind of burning desire to be an estate agent, but I will say that I was always a little bit weird, and even as a kid, I used to love the property programs and A Place in the Sun or whatever the equivalent was when my mum would be watching it. So I definitely have always had an interest in lovely homes and where people live, and I guess I'm quite nosy in that respect, but. The long and short of it is I took a Saturday job as a lettings viewings assistant for a corporate agency or high street agency while I was doing my A levels. And I hadn't really thought too much of it at the time, just to get some extra money because learning to drive was extortionate and all of that sort of thing. And I met some great people, and I used to love going in on a Saturday and during the holidays and stuff and helping out. And as a result of that, I kind of deferred my university course that I'd chosen at the end of my A levels for a year and worked full time. And within a few months, was sort of offered the opportunity to hop from lettings into sales in a full-time capacity, and that's what I did. And yeah, I loved it. I love the independence. I love the company car, which I think there was like a little Corsa at the time, but it felt really cool. I loved working with people that were a bit older than me, but were still really fun and vibrant, and we all got on and had a real laugh. And yeah, it felt great, and I absolutely loved it. And that sort of independence, I think, of earning what was quite good money for an 18, 19-year-old was great. And I just kind of kept it going from there, really. So that was my in. And that was in Farnborough in Hampshire. And the company that I worked for, quite luckily for me anyway, was sort of on a real growth spurt. So what was originally six or seven quite small offices then became 12, and then they had visions for 15, and so on and so forth. So I managed to hop between quite a few branches, and then I settled in Sunningdale in Berkshire, which was great, especially at that age as well. Saw some lovely, lovely homes there. So that was my in, really. Yeah.
No university stopped, didn't go.
It did. I didn't go. And it's one of those. I have never ever regretted it. I've never even thought about it. The one thing I think at that age I maybe did find quite hard was I was the only person out of my peer group that didn't go to university, and I was very fortunate enough to have gone to a private school, and the expectation was that everyone went to university. It didn't matter, really what you wanted. That's you were going. That's what you prepared for. So it was actually quite tough to turn around and say, "Do you know what, it's not for me." But in my core, I think I knew that it wasn't. I'd been desperate to go for some reason when I was maybe 14, 15. Maybe I'm just learning I'm like an old soul somehow, but I'd kind of got over it at that point, and I'd got over the exams and the studying, and I just wanted to kind of get out there and feel good at something as opposed to constantly having to, I don't know, to study. So yeah, I didn't go, and I've never regretted it. I'm genuinely pleased that wasn't the route for me in the end. But yeah.
Sounds like my son, who got into Cardiff to third for a year, and has been working at location ever since.
Oh, has
And
he? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
and absolutely loves it. So it's great. So, what were the lessons that you learned in that journey? So, starting from lettings, starting from a viewing assistant actually, to
Hmm.
lettings, and then to sales, and then setting up your own business.
Interestingly, and um I say interestingly because I don't think at that age and at that time I really had the sort of position to question that. But looking back on it now, I would say just your personality and your vibrancy and the way that you are is is who you are and it is what makes you good at things. And it maybe ties me into that point that we just spoke about university. I've always been, I don't know, adequately intelligent. I wouldn't say that I'm stupid. I have my moments, but I've never been an elite academic, and I really struggled with my self-confidence a lot when I was at school because although I was very fortunate to go to school where I did, you were constantly kind of pitched against people that went to Oxford and Cambridge and they got a whole, string of A stars on GCSE opening day. And I did well, I did okay, but I really struggled with that kind of comparison. So when I was younger, I did a lot of that. I never quite felt good enough. But actually, the people that you meet would always have this different stance of, well, you're so confident and you're so much older than your years and you're so bubbly and passionate. And actually, it doesn't matter what in. It just so happened that like I said to you, when I was a kid, I loved seeing nice houses on the telly and I obviously had some kind of interest in it. So yeah, I think as long as you're passionate and you're keen to learn, open to do better and learn more, um, that's something that I learnt then, maybe not as consciously as I'm unpicking it now, but also something that opening my own business in the last year and progressing through more senior roles in my career before then. You also apply. It's the reason that you get hired for a job. It's the reason you get promoted. It's the reason that people warm to you and give you their business a lot of the time is because of who you are. So yeah, I think that's probably my biggest learning curve.
Okay. I love the fact you talked about they're open to learning.
Mm.
So why is learning so important?
Because I don't think you can progress in anything in life if you constantly feel like you know it all. And there's I can't remember the name of the sort of theory. But there is such a thing where you stagnate because you feel like you've got to your A game and you feel like you're always going to stay there because you've got to your A game. And actually what happens, instead of you gradually climbing, you start declining. I guess because mentally you take your foot off the gas and you relax into your confidence and your knowledge and your experience. Um, but it's a little bit like I worked in a marketing role about 5 years ago as a marketing manager for a high street agency in Reading who pitched to me on the interview that all their business comes from referral and they were really proud of that. And I challenged that in my sort of um, bubbly, interested way. And I said, but imagine how much more business you could do and how much more impact you could make if you tried different things. And they weren't doing social media, they weren't doing video, and this was just on the cusp of COVID actually, and then we did have that opportunity for a big shift. But I think that's a bit like us, if you stop learning and reading and being interested and being open-minded to other people's teachings as well, it's not all what you can get from trainers or mastermind groups or whatever, but your peers or your competitors. Um, I think otherwise, yeah, you just settle. And as comforting as that feels, I don't think it kind of propels you much more.
So where's your go-to learnings? You mentioned masterminds, you mentioned trainers. We recently met at Opening the Gates podcast with
We
Chris
did.
Buckler,
Yeah,
which was very good.
it was a great evening. I think again, I think we're really lucky now, and it feels since the pandemic, there's been a big shift. Um, in as much as the what you can learn seems more accessible. Podcasts have really taken off and even conversations like we're having now have become much more accessible and normal. And so there's always places that you can a lot of the time find these kind of topics or discussions or debates for free online, which is great. I have been part of a mastermind group on and off actually for years. I started that as an employee again about 6 years ago, and at the time was just a sponge. I'd always wanted to have my own business, and I sort of saw that as an opportunity of I feel really frustrated. Like I really want this to be me. I want to sit in a room like this, and I want to be having these challenges and problems. And now I'm in a very fortunate position where that is me. I say fortunate, actually, sometimes it doesn't feel quite so fortunate, but I've used all of that as ammunition to kind of push me and propel me towards where I am now. Um, and again, the sessions that you put on, Stephen and Simon Gates, and there's so many great industry kind of leaders and champions that, as we said earlier, are really passionate about what they do, and also love, cheerleading people as individuals, which I think is great. And as an industry, actually, isn't something that's always been the case. I think, especially with estate agents, certainly when I started my career, 11, 12 years ago, um, opposite my office, we had a Savills office on the corner. And sometimes we'd go into the supermarket at lunchtime to get a sandwich, and you'd see your kind of equivalent in the same aisle, and we wouldn't even look at one another. I didn't even know their names. Whereas now, I go to an agent or a broker's open house, and I chat to other agents, and we message one another, and we've got WhatsApp groups, and actually, we're really forging this great community of championing one another, which I think is fantastic and is definitely the way forward, in my opinion, anyway.
I couldn't agree more. I think collaboration is incredible what's
Mm.
going on. I think there's a lot more going towards everybody wants to improve the standard, improve the industry, and by working together and actually demonstrating that, you know what, estate agents, they are nice people. They do an amazing job. They move you on to your next chapter. They help take the stress out of it. And if everybody can share, best practices, then it's what's best actually, not for us, it's for the consumer and the customer. Um, and making their lives easier. So
Mm.
it's definitely interesting times. So what made you then make the jump into your own business? And what challenges have you faced and are having at the moment?
Oh, so I've always wanted to have my own business. Even, when I was at college and university, I'd chosen a business degree, thinking that would kind of set me up for just leaving university and starting a business in what I don't know. And then, so I find it interesting that the kind of steer into estate agency has inadvertently led me to that path anyway. Um, I think for me, and as I'm sure it is for a lot of self-employed people, the frustration that I felt in my roles for high street or corporate businesses before kind of led me to really wanting to do something different and make more of an impact and put my own stamp on things, not because I necessarily thought that I knew it all and could do it all better, but because I constantly sort of felt like I was getting so far and then having to take two steps back and so far, um, and marketing and creativity has always been something that I'm really excited by and passionate by. And I remember walking through a shopping mall with my mum years ago, and there was a big Sky stand, and they had a banner introducing this new Wi-Fi service they were offering. And I saw this banner and I was trying to sort of read it and walk, and I was like, oh, I know it's about Wi-Fi and it's Sky. And I just turned to my mum and I said, why didn't they call their product Sky-Fi? And she she laughed and she was like, I don't know. It's a really good point though. And I'm sure from a legal perspective, maybe they couldn't. But I don't know. I've just always enjoyed looking at things differently. I thought, oh, how can we make that more fun or stand out more or whatever? And you can't really do that under the confines of a marketing manager and a marketing director or whatever. So that was one reason. But also, I've met so many clients over the years who actually really want your time. They want the advice and they want the kind of boundaries of professionalism that you can offer. Um, and they want your expertise and experience, but they want your time as well. And that's one thing I really struggle to give actually. If I'd go out on a viewing or evaluation, when your diary's chock a block on a Saturday, you can't give people that. And I never felt like I was really doing a great job. I did a good job, but not a great one. So they're contributing factors, I think. And from a challenge point of view now, I'm kind of a year in. I've got some beautiful homes, and I'm able to execute the marketing that I wanted to. The challenge will be that actually that on its own isn't necessarily unique anymore. There are some really brilliant agents who are striving to do the same thing. Um, so I think we will all see the challenge, hopefully, and that's what's really exciting, in the next year, 18, 5 years time, to keep propelling that forward and to keep integrating things like AI and technology and new marketing practices to keep on top of our game in that respect, but also not lose that personal element. Like I just said, your time and your energy is really important to your clients, especially at the higher end of the market. So it's easy, I think, for that to kind of drop at the expense of other things. And the market has felt a little tougher. I know we're not meant to admit that, I think, as agents, but yeah, I think last year, for many reasons, was quite difficult, and we all thought this year was going to be the year, and we've got a bit more certainty, but there is still a fair bit of caution, I would say. And again, at the higher end of the market, people are very specific about what they're looking for and where they spend their money. So yeah, you've got to be on it, which is great and what we're all here for, but.
Okay, so how do you cope with that? When the market is not where you want it to be, how do you control the controllables?
For me, it is finding what works for you as a business in terms of lead generation, and just continuing to do that. Even, I had a period of time about 6 months ago where I became really busy, which was great, and I was really excited. And the weeks were flying by, and I had media days and viewings and valuations literally coming out of my ears. And as a one-woman business, I was like, oh, this is great, but I also can't really cope, and I don't really know what I'm doing. And so my marketing basically fell off a cliff. My direct mail that I try and get things out consistently every week, it stopped probably for about 4 or 5 weeks. And at first, nothing happened, didn't really notice. And then a few weeks went by, and I was like, oh, okay, I really let that slide. So kind of automating that process has been really important and a big learning curve for me now. So that's one thing, kind of controlling that process and making sure that happens religiously is a really big thing. But also, and I spoke about this recently with another agent, your kind of mindset, I think, is so important especially when you're on your own or in a small business, because um, you do need some downtime, and it's not something I think the last year I've really carved out for myself. And a challenge has definitely been feeling as though I deserve a break, or maybe if I just put it off another week, or I can keep going, or I need to earn a holiday, whatever. But actually, just having a couple of days to not be a business owner and estate agent grace is really important, because it provides you with the energy and the perspective to kind of face challenges, difficult conversations, things like that head on. Um, so yeah, and as I said, communication with clients, especially when things are quieter, is pivotal. As everyone knows, I'm sure the saying of, like, no news is still news is a big one, and just staying in contact with people and whatnot. So yeah, there's lots to kind of to stick with.
Okay, so I think you've come up with a really important point there, which is the 30-90 day rule. So what you do in the next 30 days is going to have an impact in the next 90 days. So if you don't do anything because you're mad busy and you've got your media days and you've got all these appraisals happening and you think, oh, this is all great, but actually because you haven't done what you've done then, it's in the 90 days later, you're gonna feel
Mhm.
it. So I think that's a really great point. So you touched on automating. So what are you doing? What works for you on the automation side there, please?
I say automating. I need to caveat that with, for someone that is um on the cusp of, I mean, I'm still classed a millennial. I'm terrible with technology. I have gone to webinars, seminars. Last year, there were some great conversations at industry events about AI. And I sort of sit there and I think I've got absolutely no idea where to even start with some of this. But I've made a conscious effort to start understanding it, and tiny things like ChatGPT, for example, is a great starting point for a lot of people. I used to absolutely sweat over anything and everything that I would send out. I would be petrified that I'd spelt something wrong or it was grammatically incorrect. And I'm very conscientious, but also a bit of a perfectionist. And I've had to kind of practice that saying of done is better than perfect. I'm so sorry if you can hear my dog, it's just gone ballistic. That kind of notion that done is better than perfect is something that I've really had to try and practice. So, I can pop a letter or a document into ChatGPT and ask it to check that I've not, made some horrible error, or, even to refine things or adjust the tone of things. So very gentle, but equally it saved me a lot of time. But in terms of my kind of marketing efforts, I've now got a team of people that I outsource a lot of my direct mail distribution to, who can help me get on top of that and make sure that happens. Because the trade-off is otherwise I sit until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, 2 nights a week to make sure and it's just not. I kind of used to stick a badge of honor on myself in the first few months of, I'm staying up really late and I'm working really hard, and there's always going to be times where that's necessary, but it's certainly not sustainable, or a process that, that's not a process that will grow, or help you grow. So yeah, it's that difficult cusp when you're still early doors with starting and running a business, of when to start getting people to help you and when to start outsourcing things and hiring people. And we're at that point now where we are starting to look for a kind of first member of the team to join us, which is exciting. And a challenge that everyone's been warning me about basically since I started. So yeah, so that's where I'd say so far I've got to.
Okay, so I think another point that's coming out from this is about what do you do to celebrate your wins? Because obviously you've had loads of wins, but what can you do to celebrate your wins rather than wearing that badge of honor about I've done
Mm.
3 o'clock in the morning, 2 days this week, yay! I hope that's not your celebratory win.
It's a really good question, and someone asked me this a few weeks ago. Because when you go about setting up a business, the first couple of months you do, I've got screenshots of my phone of my first client having signed their proposal, the email banner that comes through. And I've got little kind of mementos of this, that, and the other. But it's almost like sometimes the bigger the wins get, the less you celebrate them, and because you're so busy then on chasing other stuff. And so when someone asked me a few weeks ago, what have you done to really celebrate this year? And I kind of thought, um, I don't know. Maybe sometimes you don't give yourself quite as much credit as you thought you would, because when you're setting out, you've got nothing and you've not achieved anything. So the first few feel really good, and then you kind of stop recognizing maybe sometimes the progress that you've made or the wins that you're winning. But friends and family a lot of the time are the ones that spot things and maybe call you out on that and say, hey, you need to give yourself a break, and be really pleased and proud of what you've done and where you've got to. And I'm part of a great couple of groups. One of them, I think you spoke with Sarah Walker a few weeks ago. She's done a brilliant job of getting a few of us ladies together, and geographically we're not all that close, but I think there's 7 or 8 of us in the group who are within our first year, 18 months of setting up. And we all speak most days. We get together online once a week, and hopefully we'll get together for some drinks in the summer. But those days where you've won a massive contract, or you've had a great viewing, or equally you've had a miserable day and you've had enough, it all kind of goes in there, and we chip in when we've got the time and the energy to support one another, and it's great. Things like that are fantastic and just keep you grounded, and also remind you when you need to cut yourself some slack.
I think again, you've just given and shared another lesson there. Um, Keeping those mementos of, this was my first instruction, this was my first banner, this is my first board up, because we all do go through hard times. And I think having that on your phone to go back and think, you know what, the evidence is that I did get an instruction, I did get a board, I did get a 2% sole agency, I got the most incredible review. And you can go back in those dark days and go, do you know what? Done it. I can do it again. And I think that's a really, really important point. Um, so I know you are all about extraordinary marketing for extraordinary homes. So what does extraordinary marketing look like? And when you're going in against maybe the Savills and the Knight Franks of this world, how do you compete against them?
Hmm. It was something again when I very first started that I used to find petrifying, to be honest. I hadn't got as far as thinking, oh, when I get called out and I'm sitting in front of someone and they've told me they've had, the biggest national agents for high value homes also on the same sofa, how am I going to feel? It didn't even occur to me. It's probably just as well, actually. But what I have learned very quickly actually is that with those agencies, a lot of the time, the client experience is as good as the individual that they have representing them. It's not necessarily about the brand or the processes and the systems that that brand have. The clients still get forgotten about. They still feel unloved. The marketing can still feel rushed or just not quite right. And actually, the feedback that I have had in this first year is that, as I said at the beginning, my personality, when I've gone out and met those clients, isn't capped by me representing anybody anymore. I'm not sitting speaking to somebody knowing that I need to win this instruction because it needs to go on the shiny whiteboard the following morning. I'm there. Obviously, I want to win the instruction for myself. It means more now than it ever has done before. But actually, I'm also balancing my reputation, how they perceive me, how they might talk about me to their circle over dinner. There's all of those nuances get introduced as well. And so for me, the start of that experience begins on those initial appointments, and I don't tend to bring a lot of fluff or kind of corporate fluff in, so people know what they're getting right from the off, I guess. The marketing to me is really important because actually we do cater the marketing that we produce to each home individually. It's not a case of we hire a team in and they go around within an hour and they take beautiful photos, but if I've got a character cottage that feels really lovely and warm and inviting when you physically go there, I want to try and have that conveyed from Rightmove, and actually that's a bit of an art, and I've got an incredible team that really help me do that. But we set the kind of the lifestyle of the home, and then we market it, as opposed to just taking very literal images. And again, our copywriting is very evocative. We try and tell a story. We want people to read our brochures and see our marketing and think, oh, do you know what? How lovely would that room be at Christmas? Or, how wonderful would it be to come home and be met with X, Y, or Z? Instead of, oh, well, the hallway's big, isn't it? So that'd be great for the kids' wellies and the school bags or whatever. Because we know how people make their decisions when they come to buying a home. So yeah, so that's sort of where that comes from. And again, that in itself is a client experience. The media days are one of my favorite parts of this job. And clients, I've not had a single client that's gone out on that day. They've all been given the option if they want to, take themselves off and be out of the way, they're welcome to. But no, they really embrace it. They put on lunch. They want to buy the flowers. They want to buy the croissants. They want to, ask my videographer, what's the most expensive house you've ever been in, and how does this compare, and what do you think? It's great. It's lovely.
So what's the media day look like then? apart from nice
Usually,
croissants and flowers and
yeah, we definitely eat well, I have to say. It's usually it can be quite manic. And again, kind of before the media day, we send out lots of prep information to clients, and most of them because especially for homes that have been on the market before, and maybe we're the second agent, this is the big tangible thing. The big tangible difference so far. You know, you can promise client experience and you can promise I'll stay in touch more than Savills did. But this, they can see the effort, they can see the expense and the time that you're sparing. So they usually prepare the house beautifully. But we have fresh flowers. We do tend to bring my car's usually packed with cushions, throws, books, decorative items. Again, you know, I'll have sort of scenes in my mind of how certain areas of the home could look. So we spend a couple of hours in the morning dressing. It could well be what we're finding now actually is a lot of bedrooms have been repurposed as studies or dining rooms or a dining room and a home office. And actually, you know, we want to give each room a clear identity based on who we think is going to buy the home. So a lot of the time, you know, we're moving furniture around or we're repurposing a room. And then yeah, our media team will always take a mixture of kind of lifestyle shots, so sort of softer detail images, and then the more functional stuff. Although it still looks beautiful, it has to be accurate and you know, and very visual for people. And then we have our video tours, which are presenter led, and it's the part I always find very anxious. I wouldn't say I'm a natural born presenter. The editors of the videos do an incredible job. I've probably got more blooper content than I have actual property tour content. But yeah, we have a great time, and as I said, the owners always love how much effort is put in, and a lot of the feedback is actually, you know, you've really brought our home to life. I've had that a few times now, which is the best feedback that I could hope for, really, because that's what it's all about. So yeah, that in a nutshell is kind of how it tends to go.
brilliant. So would you charge an upfront marketing fee for doing all of that?
Yes, we do now. When I started, I didn't. But yes, we do now. And I have to be honest, it's not actually something that has really been questioned. You know, I've not had a huge amount of objection to it, which I was surprised by. For me, it was quite a leap actually of, oh, you know, how's this going to go down? But as I said, it's a really tangible thing that a lot of the big agents don't really offer. So yes, we do charge now. Yeah.
Yeah, no, look, as I've got older and have been doing this, I've come away from a no sale, no fee, you know, especially with Chris Watkins, that I think only, well, almost one in two. So you can flip a coin and yes, you sell, and yes, and no, you don't sell. So, you know, if you think of the amount that you're investing in yourself and the amount you're investing on the media days and all
Yeah.
the stuff in there, it's crazy. So I
It's a
wonder how
hugely
many.
expensive process, really, and especially as a startup. You know, the first few, you know, don't get me wrong, you've got to prove yourself, and you've got to, you know, um, but also there's no other industry really that would outlay this amount of expense, and not expect, you know, an account solicitors are a prime example. I know someone at the moment who's engage a solicitor, and every phone call, every email there, it's all totted up, and I think, God, wouldn't that be good? You know, I don't think we're quite there yet, but there are very few other services where, you know, you wouldn't be expected to pay up front, or at least contribute. So yeah, I call it an engagement fee. I know there's a few terms floating about, but yeah, it seems to go down well. And I think also with the right clients, it makes them feel as though they're really investing in moving, and it's their way of contributing to the process. So
Definitely. So you mentioned you're in a WhatsApp group and another group as well, and we talked about collaboration. Um, what else do you do? Do you have a mentor or anybody that helps you as well, or is it just these groups?
So I've been part of the AJ Mastermind for a couple of years, which is run by Sam Ashdown and Phil Jones. So we met a long time ago now, 6, 7 years ago, when I was an employee for another estate agent, and I reported directly into the owner of that business, who had absolutely no interest in going along whatsoever. And without bashing, I think this comes back to the point we spoke about earlier in terms of always being open to growth and to learning. And I guess I was fortunate in that he was happy for me to go along and soak everything up a bit like a sponge. And I saw that as my opportunity to do exactly that, which is what I did. So yeah, I've worked with Sam on and off for quite a few years, which has been great. And the agents that she works with as well have become firm friends. So that's been wonderful, and a big investment for sure, but something that I attribute really certainly a lot of the guts to kind of step up and do something on my own too.
Brilliant. Well, I'm really grateful for your time. Keep
Thank
on
you.
doing what you're doing, selling those
Thanks.
extraordinary homes and the extraordinary marketing you're doing.
Thank you.
If people want to get hold of you, Grace, how do they do that, please?
Um, Telephone, the old-fashioned way, telephone, WhatsApp, email, and I'm big on Instagram, so socials is Grace Green Homes. And then website and email is gracegreenhomes.com.
Perfect. Well, everybody, thank you so much for watching and listening. Please like, subscribe, share. Grace, thank you for being a great guest. Until the next time, everybody, thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks, Stephen. Bye.